Hey everyone, Marco Strange here, and welcome to part 2 of How I'd Write a Gravity Falls sequel. Before we jump in, I want to thank everyone for viewing my videos and helping my channel grow over the past few months. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to see more of my content in the future. Also, stay until the end to see new artwork of a character from my book, Roxy Kitsune and the Desert Vixens. With all that out of the way, let's jump into episode 6. Episode 6 takes place a few days later, and all four are in a new dimension. The dimension sees them surrounded by water and on a ship. We see Mabel keeping an eye out while Dipper is steering the boat. Dipper yells asking if she sees anything, while Mabel says no and asks if Alex is awake yet. Just then, Alex shows up. Alex is the person they found in the android base. He still has no memory of who he is, and they needed to call him something. Mabel came up with Alex because it's the guy's name on a $10 bill she once had a crush on years ago. Alex had also woken up hours after they jumped dimensions, but he's been oversleeping since then. Dipper thinks it's because of being locked up and the android's using him for experiments. Alex says that he's sorry for oversleeping, and Dipper says it's no problem. Mabel also comes down to see what they're talking about, and Dipper tells her she should be keeping watch. Mabel says there's nothing near them for miles, so they should be fine. However, that's when fish people jump on the boat holding swords, telling them to surrender. Dipper glares at Mabel, who smiles and apologizes before yelling for Wendy to come and help. As one of the fish people steps closer, a frying pan flies straight into his face. As he falls to the ground, the rest turn to see Wendy cracking her knuckles, asking who's next. The fish people charge after them, but they all fight them off. However, Alex has trouble fighting, so Dipper rushes over to him. He helps him sit down and tells him to stay down while he and the others take care of this. Shortly after that, all the fish people are unconscious. When he says it was easier than she thought, it starts throwing some of them overboard. Alex gets up and tries to help out. He apologizes again, and Dipper tells him not to worry about it. Alex also asks if it's okay to throw them overboard like this. When he says they can't hold them on the ship, it's not like they'll drown. Mabel chimes in saying she agrees while helping throw another fish person overboard. Once all the fish people are gone, Dipper calls everyone together. He goes over how it's been a couple of days since they got this ship and have been sailing. A person on a small island told him they recognized standing forward from the photo Dipper's carrying. The person told them they were headed to an island known as Sparosa. Some rumors are that the island has a massive treasure, but no one even knows if it exists. Dipper pulls out a map showing their current location and where Sparosa is supposed to be. Alex asks if it's safe to go there, since there are stories about how dangerous it is. Mabel chimes in saying, if you knew us, you know we're ready for any kind of danger. Alex asks what that means, but they see a bright flash of lightning before Mabel can explain. Dipper jumps as he checks his goggles. He tells them they didn't warn him about this, and it's like the storm came out of nowhere. Wendy jumps up saying whether that's true or not, they need to focus on sailing through it. Dipper nods and gives everyone orders. He tells Wendy to take the wheel, and she runs up and grabs hold of it. He then tells Mabel to get below deck and ensure the hull isn't leaking. The ship wasn't in the best shape when they got it, so there's a chance holes could open in the hull. Mabel runs inside, and Alex asks what he can do. Dipper tells him to assist Mabel as best as he can. Alex nods and follows her inside. Finally, Dipper runs to the wheel and stands next to Wendy. Dipper tells her the goggles say there's an island, and he will lead Wendy there. When he asks why she needs to be at the wheel, and Dipper tells her, because your arms are stronger than mine. Wendy lightly laughs at that as it starts to rain. She tells Dipper to lead the way, and Dipper gives her directions. After turning the wheel for a little bit, Dipper tells her she has it lined up. He says, southeast, that's the direction you want to go. Wendy says she got it, but the waves make it difficult to move forward. At the same time, the gust of winds also mess with staying straight. To add to that, it's also blowing against the loose handrail, but Dipper and Wendy are too preoccupied to notice. When he asks how much further it is, Dipper tells her it's soon. They just need to keep moving. However, his goggles alert him about danger, and he notices the handrail as it gives way and flies towards Wendy's head. Dipper yells look out and pushes Wendy out of the way. She falls to the floor, and the handrail hits Dipper in the head, knocking him out. The episode ends with Wendy rushing over to him, screaming his name as the scene fades to black. Episode 7 sees Dipper waking up. However, he wakes up in his room in the Mystery Shack. Mabel is next to him, asking if he planned to sleep in all day. Dipper says he had a strange dream and tries to explain, but Mabel cuts him off, saying they need to get ready. She throws him a pair of swim trunks and tells him she'll meet him at the car as she leaves. After Dipper gets dressed, he runs outside to see Mabel in Wendy's car, which is also Stan's old car. Dipper gets in the back seat while Mabel is in the front next to Wendy. Wendy starts the car and she starts driving. As she does, Mabel jokes that she thought Dipper would take forever, and Dipper rolls his eyes. As Mabel continues, Wendy stops and Dipper looks outside to see they're at Greasy's diner. Shortly after, the door opens and Mabel says, "Good to see you again, Paws." Pacifica climbs in next to Dipper and says she's always happy to hang out with them. She asks Dipper and Mabel if they made up their mind about what they want to do after school, and Dipper explains how he wants to be a scientist, while Mabel talks about opening a business selling her handmade sweaters. Pacifica asks that she's considering becoming an accountant, so maybe they could open it together. Mabel smiles at that idea. After talking for a while, Wendy stops and tells them we're here. All of them are at a lake in the woods. They all get out of the car and walk towards the water. As they do, Dipper pulls out one of his handmade journals and reads from it. He explains that one of the things from Ford's journals was about this lake and how it changes at night. He says he doesn't remember what exactly it said, but they'll be able to see it for themselves. Mabel cuts in, saying, "Less talking, more swimming." She then strips down to her swimsuit and runs to the water. Wendy laughs as she does the same. Dipper sighs while Pacifica walks up to him and says, you'd think she'd eventually run out of all that energy. Dipper smiles as he says he might consider putting Mabel as an anomaly in one of his journals. Pacifica playfully pushes him and tells him they should join them. She gets down to her swimsuit and runs to the water as Dipper follows close behind. All of them spend hours playing in the lake. They brought out an inflatable ball at one point and saw how long they could keep it out of the water. Later, they decided to play chicken with Wendy and Mabel, beating Dipper and Pacifica every time. Dipper suggested switching teams, but Mabel refused as she called her and Wendy the ultimate chicken team. Wendy laughs, saying they'll have to work on the name, but she agrees as she and Mabel high-five. As the sun sets, Wendy makes a bonfire and asks for help to get more wood. Mabel offers, and both head off into the woods. Dipper and Pacifica sit next to each other as they grab a stick and roast marshmallows. Dipper asks how hers is since it's her first time doing this, and she says it tastes better than she expected. Dipper smiles and tells her that's good to hear. As they sit together, Pacifica keeps wanting to say something, but she can't find the words. Likewise, Dipper is in the same predicament, and both are unaware of the other having an issue trying to talk. Eventually, Pacifica sighs as she says, "Dipper, what do you think about me coming to the same college as you and Mabel?" Dipper awkwardly yells, "That would be great," before blushing. Pacifica laughs as she says, "Mabel is right. You look adorable when you're embarrassed." Dipper blushes even more before turning his head away from her. Pacifica stops and tells him she's happy to hear Dipper would love that as she places her hand on his. Dipper sighs as he smiles and turns to look at her. As they look at each other, the sun finally sets and the lake begins to glow. Both of them get up and walk closer as Dipper tries to see what will happen. As he does, he hears Mabel yelling for him. He tries to tell her to wait, but the yells get louder. Eventually, he turns to ask her to stop for a minute and ends up waking up on the ship. Mabel is standing over his bed, smiling as she hugs him. Dipper slowly hugs her back and asks how long he's been out. Mabel tells him it's been a few hours, but thankfully they made it to land. Thankfully, Wendy had a compass, so she could keep going the way he told her before getting knocked out. Dipper asks what all happened while he was out, and the episode ends as Mabel was about to tell him. Episode 8 sees Dipper looking over their ship. The storm lasted until they got close to the island, and a giant wave crashed them inland. Mabel comments that she was shocked that Dipper could sleep through something like that, and Dipper corrects her, saying there's a difference between being knocked out and asleep. Dipper then hears someone yelling for him, causing him to turn around. Wendy wraps her arms around him and says she's happy to see he's okay. He hugs her back and says, "Same to you." After breaking the hug, Dipper starts thinking about what to do next. At the same time, Alex shows back up. Dipper asks where he was, and Alex says he was finding some wood to make a fire since it's nighttime. Dipper says it's probably a good idea to set up camp and think about what to do next in the morning. Wendy says she has already set up everything and points at the tents. After getting a fire going, all four are sitting around it. Mabel comments that this reminds her of the time they went camping last year by a lake that Dipper said was in one of Ford's journals. Dipper sighs as he says the only thing that happened was the water glows a different color each night. Mabel says that was still cool, but Dipper keeps frowning. Wendy jumps in and says maybe it's better to change the subject. Alex just sits there, confused about what's going on. As they sit around the fire, something is watching them from the trees. It slowly gets closer as the others are unaware something is watching them. Meanwhile, Alex is asking more about them. He talks about how crazy the stories they told him about their past are. He asks if they did stop a giant triangle from taking over the universe, and Mabel says it's true. Dipper asks if they did have help from everyone, but the whole saving the universe thing is true. Alex says he can't believe it, and Wendy adds sometimes she can't believe it either, and she was there. Suddenly, they hear a sound, making them all look in the direction from where it came. Mabel asks what that was, and Dipper says he isn't sure. That's when he realizes he never put his goggles back on. Alex pulls them out and tries to give them to Dipper, but he's pulled away and screams. Thankfully, he dropped the goggles, so Dipper went over to grab them and put them on. He sees that a bunch of monkey-type animals surround them. The goggles say they're a little smaller than them, but they are strong enough to grab them and take them away. Dipper says one of them is jumping towards Wendy, but she punches it as it flies towards her. Another flies towards her, and she grabs it and throws it at one flying towards Dipper. Meanwhile, Alex breaks free and is holding a stick as he tries to fight them off, while Mabel is doing the same. They continue to fight them off until a couple of them grab Alex again. He tries to shake them off, but they quickly lift him and run away. As they carry Alex away, the rest of them run away as well. Mabel yells to Alex when she sees him and drops her stick as she chases after them. Dipper runs after them, but his head starts hurting and he falls to the ground. Wendy rushes over, asking if he's okay. Dipper says he's fine as he tries to get back up, but struggles to get back to his feet. Wendy says he's in no shape to chase after them and holds him in place. Dipper tells her to go after them, but she refuses because Dipper can't defend himself. He tries to tell her he'll be fine, but Wendy refuses as she helps him by the fire. Dipper starts to yell, saying Alex could be in danger, as well as Mabel. Wendy agrees and says she shouldn't leave him alone because that would put more of them in danger. Plus, Mabel was chasing after them, so they're not sure if she's actually in trouble or not. Dipper tries to argue more, but Wendy keeps telling him he'll only cause more harm than good. That's when Dipper yells, "I'm not a dumb little kid anymore with a crush on you, so stop acting like you're the boss." Wendy gets angry after hearing this. Wendy yells back that she's not saying this because she's older and thinks he'll do whatever she says. She's saying this because she's his friend and doesn't want to see him get hurt. After hearing that, Dipper stops struggling and Wendy lets him go. Dipper sits next to the fire and Wendy sits beside him and puts an arm around him. The episode ends with Wendy saying, "Don't forget what I said about Mabel. She could take care of herself." Episode 9 sees Dipper and Wendy walking through the forest as they're looking for Mabel and Alex. Wendy asks if Dipper is okay and tells her he's fine. Wendy then asks how he knows which way to go, and Dipper explains that the goggles can track where their gadgets are. Right after that, they go back to having an awkward silence. It's finally broken when Dipper sighs and asks if they should talk about last night. Wendy asks what is there to talk about, and Dipper gets to the point about what he said last night. He says he's sorry and should have yelled that to her because he knows her better than that. Wendy giggles saying she knows, but Dipper stops her and says it doesn't change that it was out of line, and he knows Wendy is only looking out for him. Wendy smiles as she puts her hand on his shoulder and tells him thanks for saying all of that. She also adds that she's never viewed him as a stupid kid with a crush on her, even back when they first met. He smiles as he hears that, and she adds, "I just view you as a dumb friend who has a crush on me." She then lightly shoves him as she laughs. Dipper laughs as he says, "I guess I deserve that." They quickly get quiet as they hear something and hide behind a tree. They see two monkeys show up and look around. After a couple of minutes, they leave. Once they're out of view, Dipper and Wendy poke their head out from behind the tree. Dipper says they should keep their voices down, and Wendy agrees as they start walking again. Dipper leads away as the goggles tell him they're getting closer. They slowly move forward until Dipper motions for them to stop. He tells Wendy they're close by, and he tries to whisper loud enough to see if Mabel is close. After a few tries, he hears Mabel yell as she grapples next to him and Wendy. Dipper jumps as he tells her she shouldn't be so loud, otherwise the monkeys might find them. Mabel smiles as she apologizes. Wendy asks if she was able to save Alex, and Mabel tells her no. However, she explains that she found their home and was resting before going in to save Alex. Dipper asks if she planned on going in alone, and Mabel says she didn't have a way to call them, so what other choice did she have? Dipper face palms, realizing they should have brought walkie-talkies with them before they decided to go through the portal to save Stan and Ford. Mabel pats him on the back and says it's too late to fix that, but they still need to help Alex. Dipper says they need to make sure he's there before charging in after him. Mabel nods and then leads them to what she believes is the monkey's home. After a few minutes, they arrive on a hill that overlooks the area Mabel was talking about. It's a small village in the trees with a bunch of huts. Dipper says the goggles aren't able to find Alex, but it would make sense for him to be in one of those huts. When he asks what the plan is, and smiles as he turns to look at her, Dipper takes a moment to think before smiling as he has an idea. In the village, the monkeys mind their business like any other day. A few are carrying what appears to be food in large containers made out of sticks. Suddenly, Mabel grapples above them and takes one of the containers. She yells this is her food now and sticks her tongue out at the monkeys. She then grapples away as all the monkeys chase after her. Meanwhile, Dipper and Wendy sneak around the village to find Alex. Wendy mentions that this was a clever idea by Dipper, and he replies that he knows Mabel could take care of herself, so he knew she'd be perfect for it. Wendy nods as they continue searching. Eventually, they come across a hut and find Alex tied up and gagged inside. Alex sees them and starts squirming as Dipper runs over to untie him. He removes the gag, and Alex asks how they found them. Dipper says they'll explain later, but they need to get out of there. He finally breaks him free and motions for all of them to leave. However, Dipper stops as he sees something on the floor. When he asks what he's doing, Dipper grabs something and runs outside with her. All three leave the hut and go to meet up with Mabel. After waiting a few minutes, Mabel shows up. When he asks if she lost all the monkeys, and Mabel nods, saying that most of them stopped chasing her after she dropped the food. Alex goes to thank her, but he's cut off as Mabel hugs him and says she's happy to see he's okay. He smiles and hugs her back. Next, Dipper talks about how there's something new they need to discuss. Everyone looks confused until Dipper pulls out a red journal. Mabel asks why he brought one of his journals, and Dipper replies that he didn't. He then says it's Ford's, and the episode ends as he says he found something horrifying inside of it. Episode 10 starts with everyone looking terrified. Even Wendy, who always tried to look calm and collective, couldn't hide how scared she was at the revelation Dipper had just told them. Mabel was also on the verge of tears after hearing it. Eventually, Alex broke the silence by asking, "You're saying there's some group out there trying to resurrect this Bill guy, and they may be close to doing it?" Dipper says that according to Ford's journal, yes. Mabel asks why anyone would want to resurrect that monster. Dipper says it doesn't matter, and what matters is stopping them from bringing him back. When he asks what's next, Dipper says there may be a portal inside of a cave, and shows the drawing Ford made in his journal of a map. Dipper closes the journal and leads the way to it. As they're walking, Mabel stays silent as she's still scared of the thought that Bill could come back. Wendy notices this and puts her arm around her. She tells Mabel they'll be able to stop him before anything happens. Mabel says she hopes Wendy is right about that. Meanwhile, Alex walks beside Dipper. He asks if Dipper is sure there's a portal there, and Dipper says it would explain why Ford's journal was left here. Alex asks if it's possible the monkeys ate them, but Dipper says Stan and Ford could have dealt with them easily, so he doubts it. Dipper then asks if Alex knows why they captured him, and Alex shrugs, saying he's not sure. As they walk, they hear a noise, and Dipper sees the monkeys chasing after them again. He yells for everyone to run, and they follow him. Everyone runs as fast as possible, with the monkeys close behind them. Alex asks how much further is this place, and Dipper says they should be coming up to it any moment. Mabel yells that she's not sure she can run for much longer, and Wendy tells her she has to. Thankfully, Dipper sees the cave and points at it. They all run inside, turn back, and stop as they see the monkeys have stopped chasing them. Alex asks why they're not chasing them anymore, and Dipper looks closer at them. He comments that they look like they're scared of something. After a while, all the monkeys turn around and disappear into the trees. Alex remarks that he's not sure if this is a good or a bad sign. Dipper says whether it is or not, they have to find a portal, and he leads the way deeper into the cave. All four slowly walk through the cave, unsure what they'll find. When he pulls out a couple of flashlights and hands one to Alex. They look around, making sure there's nothing that will jump out and attack them. Mabel asks Dipper if his goggles are saying anything, and he says that there are some energy readings similar to the portals they've walked through, but he's not sure how deep it is into the cave yet. She asks if there is anything else, and Dipper says not that he can see. As they walk in more, they start to hear what sounds like a howl. Wendy jumps in front of them and turns her shield on. She asks Dipper what that was. He says his goggles aren't picking up anything other than the readings, which are getting stronger. They slowly move forward and find the portal. They also see that it's sending out a noise like the wind. They all stop and laugh as they realize they were scared of nothing. Mabel comments that this probably made the monkeys not want to come in. Alex adds, "Yeah, what a bunch of stupid animals." Dipper laughs until he realizes they didn't start to hear that sound till they got deeper into the cave. Alex then asks, well, what else could have scared them? Suddenly, a figure emerges from the shadows and kicks Alex against the wall. All of them jump, with Mabel being the first to attack the figure. She aims her grappling hook and fires, but the figure dodges. Then it grabs the rope from the hook and pulls Mabel towards her. As Mabel gets closer, it grabs hold of her and throws her to the ground. Wendy is next to jump into the fight by hitting it with her shield. She knocks it away from Mabel, and Wendy begins fighting it hand to hand. While Wendy is fighting the unknown figure, Dipper runs over to check on Mabel and Alex. Mabel slowly sits up while rubbing her head, and Alex is watching the fight with his light. Alex asks why Dipper didn't warn them, and Dipper tells him his goggles didn't show that thing. Even now, they're not showing it like it's shown everything else to them. Meanwhile, Wendy is still fighting the figure. She's holding her own, but the figure is tiring her out. Dipper knows she'll be in trouble if this keeps going and tries to think of a plan. He gets one and whispers to Mabel. Mabel nods and aims the hook once again. Dipper then yells for Wendy to get down, and Mabel fires her hook once she does. The hook rushes towards the figure, missing it like last time. However, as it tries to grab it, Mabel reverses it and sends a huge stone toward the figure. It knocks it over before it can dodge, and Dipper yells they must leave now. All of them turn to the portal and run through it. As they do, the figure stands back up, looking at the portal. The episode ends with the figure removing its hood, revealing a mask with glowing green eyes. And that was part 2 of How I'd Write a Gravity Falls sequel. Again, thank you for everyone who's been watching and enjoying all my videos. As I said earlier, I planned on showing some artwork from my book, and here's one of the characters from my book, Shayla Lynx. Shayla is the side character in the story and was inspired by my martial arts teacher. For those that don't know, I'm currently a 3rd degree black belt and about to get my 4th degree. So who is Shayla and what's her role in my story? Check out my book to find out. The link to my book and the artist who makes all my artwork will be in the description. Like I said earlier, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to see more of my content in the future. Also, let me know what you think of the story so far in the comments. I'm always interested to hear what all of you think of my writing. And as always, I'm Marco Strange. Stay safe, stay strange.